It's the 7th of May, 2025, coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. Conclave has begun. Here's what's really going on behind the scenes. The truth no one else will tell you. The deep state played a game of musical chairs as they all scrambled to bid for various global positions over the weekend. And a firm message goes out to all. As our connections complete, we are ready to stop dancing with the enemy and more than ready for Earth and humanity to move forward. Well, it's the 7th of May. Sorry I missed you on Monday. To those of you that are listening and celebrated, happy Cinco de Mayo. We kind of missed that here. And there's not a whole lot going on in the regular news at the moment. You know, there's a few things, but the main topic of discussion around the world, both in the news and out of the news, is Conclave and what's going on at the Vatican. So I thought we would cover that. It's interesting. It's been interesting times. And then give you a little bit of an update on other things that we have been working on to move us forward. So over the weekend, there were several meetings that were going on behind the scenes. There were obviously a lot of discussions amongst deep state members as to who is going to be the next pope. There was also other discussions about who was going to be the new black pope, gray pope, and of course, many other positions around the world. You see, the Vatican's an interesting place, and it's not the only one, but there are several other places kind of, let's just say, like it in the world, but this one is theirs. At least they think so, as far as the Order of the Black Sun is concerned. And they're really not wrong. The Vatican was pretty much founded by, or Vatican City and the Catholic Church was pretty much founded by a lot of the Black nobility families. If you haven't watched it, and I know I've mentioned this before, there's a series called Da Vinci's Demons, and it talks a lot about the formation of the church, everything that was going on at the time, and it's fairly accurate history for once. But it's it's an interesting little series. I don't know how many seasons there were. It's been a long time since I've watched it. But I do remember there being a lot of very interesting information about the times. So as it relates to the deep state, so you can truly understand the magnitude of these meetings over the weekend, I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory about an experience that I personally had, so you can understand what I mean when I say tripping the system. So on one of my trips, and I told some of you, if you've been listening for quite a while, this story before, I traveled all throughout Europe and many places around the world, and on one of my trips, I was gone for several months outside the country, and I ended up landing in this particular trip in Russia. Now, the reason why I landed in Russia is because Russia is one of 7 places in the world where you can do what's called a tripping or a flipping of the entire system. Now, tripping the system is a lot more interesting than the deep state may think. But, they definitely gave it a go today. So, as far as my personal experience, I'll tell you kind of how this went. So I was there as what you would call the principal in the organization, or at least that's what they referred to me as. And I was there with one of the former trustees, who was not former at the time. And this was well over, almost 14 years ago now. And during the trip, they decided that they needed a terminal. That was one of the first things they did. And the terminal was brought to Russia, rented, I should say, to Russia for about $8 million. And it came from the American deep state generals. You see, at the time, the Department of Defense had the contract under the Order of the Black Sun to be security for the world's financial system. The main office was not in America. It was actually in Germany, Berlin to be exact. And it was made up of not only American generals, but there were other generals from other countries, Germany, Indonesia, and a few others that were present at the time. So when the terminal was delivered, it was a couple days after Christmas, to Russia, I was informed that the terminal had arrived and that they signed a contract for, I think, $8 million to bring the terminal there, and they had a year to pay. Along with the terminal came several generals, which stayed at a hotel in Moscow, which I don't know if it's still named this, but at the time it was called the Golden Ring Hotel. At the Golden Ring Hotel, there was quite a few newcomers too over the course of a few weeks. So the Americans showed up. We had a gentleman by the name of Michael that showed up from the Federal Reserve. There were people there from JP Morgan Chase, Credit Suisse, UBS, Citibank, and I think HSBC, and a number of other large banking institutions. And they were all negotiating how much each bank would get. And the amounts were in the trillions. For me, my goal at the time, not knowing any different, I believed that the Treasury was actually government, which it's not, and that the Federal Reserve was something we wanted to get rid of. So it was during the Obama administration that I was there, and I felt that if we put gold at the Treasury, we could help the United States. That was my whole goal at the time. That's what I planned to do. This was a couple years after the crash of the markets, which ensued a couple years earlier, and it appeared that the U.S. was struggling. And my main thing at the time, as you would say, somewhat patriot. On the other hand, I felt that they were going to actually pay me the money. This is my first go around, with these people on this level. And I thought that they were going to actually pay me the money that I was supposed to have for arranging all of this. Now, since that time, I've obviously arranged for a lot of funds for the US and many other countries in the world, and nobody has ever upheld their end of the bargain, meaning there has always been a contract and there's always been money that was supposed to be paid for me to release funds under various covenants and contracts in the past. Now, we don't have any more of those, but at the time I was actually doing it not because of contracts and covenants and didn't really understand how all that worked. I was just looking to help the US. So there came a point after about a month to a month and a half of negotiations with various Russian government persons and let's call it Russian deep state persons. And, there was all kinds of people that showed up, not only from Russia, but other countries. And there were other people there that were even from Islamic countries and lots of people, let's just say. The UN was there. I had run into the United Nations, who offered me business, as much business as I wanted. And they said that, business will fall out of the sky if I just do what they want me to do. This was in the lobby of a different hotel. Obviously, we did not stay at the same hotel because the Russians were the handlers and the go-betweens, as it were at the time. So they all agreed that what they wanted to do was do a verification, with this terminal of myself and the other lady. And they also felt that it was a good idea that we do something called tripping the system. Now, tripping the system means that there are many parties involved. So according to the deep state's understanding, there should be 7 different areas of the world, which there's more than 7, and they would need 7 additional, they didn't know this because they tried to do it today. There were 7 additional persons or non-persons that would participate. And then, of course, the ultimate veto would be Marduk. Now, by tripping the system, this means that it would be a complete reset of power and control of the monetary system, is my understanding. However, the end result of the voting, let's call it, didn't really work out in their favor at that time. So nothing really took place. Also, flipping of the system could have meant that the alpha system, where all the money is produced or was at the time, would then move to the pole position over the omega system, which is something Marduk definitely didn't want, because at the time he did not have any control over me. I didn't even know what a Marduk was. And the first thing he wanted to do was get control over me and then have me spit out money like an ATM machine for him in order to carry out his orders and instructions here. Well, I didn't learn that till a few years after this. Took me about 3 years to start figuring out that Marduk is not my friend. But during this time, this is what was agreed upon. So all of the different parties who were in control, both for the Order of the Dragon and for the Order of the Black Sun in different areas, turned their keys respectively. Now, when I say they turned their keys, that means they were given, and at the time had, access codes and a key code. So the two, one is for the Order of the Black Sun and one is for the Order of the Dragon. And then they would enter these 2 codes in, agree upon things, and then they would place their vote on who they wanted to be the new, I guess, trustee at the time. This was my understanding. Who were going to be the new trustees. So it was kind of like a wiping out of all the old and installation of the new as it relates to the alpha system. Now, they felt they didn't care which system was what and probably didn't know the difference anyway on the human level, but all the votes came in, and I remember there was a little bit of a delay. It took a couple of days for this to be achieved, and the reason why wasn't because of the humans. But I was told that the wrong person, or persons, plural, in the US tried to enter their respective codes and tried to bypass the others. But then eventually, about a day or so later, this is what I was told by the Russians, Nikolai, the Russian spy, as I call him, Nikolai, the Russian spy, told me that it might take another day. Oh, the wrong person entered the codes in. We need to wait for the right person to enter the codes in, and this is what I was told. Now, beyond those people who really don't have a say, at the time, there were a lot of proxy agreements, a lot of covenants between bloodlines and those types of things that existed. So therefore, they would throw their hats in the proverbial ring, kind of like a global conclave, let's call it. So all their votes go in, and they go in anonymously, so you don't know who voted for who. And then beyond that, you would have other persons. So you had your Marduk, Enki, Enlil, Abraxas, and Artemis at the time, and you also had Lucifer in there, and you probably would have had Michael at the time as well. So your standard game players plus the parties that believed that they were in control of all 7 of these sectors of Earth. So those instructions are really what took the extra time. And then, of course, once all of those people placed their vote, Marduk has the final say as the guardian of Earth at the time, ground commander, if you will, under global martial law, which existed. So they got the information back, and it came back that I was to be the new quote unquote trustee. Now, nobody liked that. They went ahead and voted again to see if there's something wrong with the machine, and that was the actual delay. So then the next day, or a couple days later, Nikolai, the Russian spy, shows up at my hotel and says that he needs a meeting. So I come to a place, and we met, place in the hotel. And he says, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, who am I?" Because the second time that they asked for the answer was the same. And he said, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I'm a person. I'm Kim. What else do you want to know? We've been hanging out now for about 2-3 months. So, what else do you need to know?" And he told me, "Well, they appointed you the new trustee." Now, what they didn't know, or probably did because everything is, bugged, they probably knew that I had already received a phone call from my friend. I call him my ghosty friend. They call them ghosts. They can go in and out of any country, anywhere. And this was one of those people. And he said that he was the one that had actually arranged for the terminal to go to Russia for me. I called my friend and asked for help. And he called and he said, "You're not going to believe this, but you're the new trustee." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, you're the new trustee, but this time you have veto vote, you have a say, you can veto anything the families want to do." He's like, "You're in a much more powerful position than the lady was, and you're the new trustee." And I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And obviously I've learned quite a bit since this time. So he comes and informs me of this, and then they spent a lot of time trying to get me to sign power of attorney over to them. Then they told me that they wanted me to move to Russia. I was to go back to the States, and they wanted me to move to Russia for 6 months so I could help teach them how to use the system. I was like, "Well, that's interesting because I need to learn how to use it first." Little did I know, at the same time, Marduk, Inky, and Enlil took up shop just outside of Moscow themselves. So I guess that's what this was all about. So for whatever reason, there was about $2 million put on the table by the Russian government in order to get me to make this move, which I believe was taken by Nikolai, the Russian spy. I never received a dime from anyone. They called me when I returned to America and claimed that I worked for the NSA, which I didn't even know where the NSA was at the time. I'm like, "Well, if I work there, where's my paycheck? And, where the heck is the NSA?" I didn't know. So this was kind of like what you would say was my first encounter with people of this nature on that level. Now, flash forward to the last few days, and this is part of the reason why I didn't do the report on Monday, because this hadn't yet percolated into, let's just say, the final outcome. When these guys make plans, it doesn't always make a whole lot of sense. Sometimes it never makes sense. But in this particular case, it was like, okay. I knew it was going to happen on Conclave, first day of Conclave today. And I knew that they were jockeying for positions. I didn't really understand because some of them were related to the Vatican and what you would consider conclave type events, like choosing the black pope or choosing a new gray pope and choosing a new white pope. That's kind of normal protocol. There is also another position that usually changes hands around this time, which is the president, for lack of a better term, of the Holy See itself, which is a position above the Pope. And I definitely knew, based on what I was hearing the Trump operatives talk about, that they had intended to put Trump, or whatever that orange thing is walking around these days, into a position much higher than the Pope. So that little meme that went out about the Pope, when you ask the White House staff, they will say, oh, he was just making fun of this whole process and the Catholic Church and the Pope and all of this stuff. But that really isn't true. He was actually vying for another position that was much higher than that. So technically, you could say he could drive the white Pope around from this position he was looking for. And at the time, this is over the weekend, he could drive the Pope around, white Pope around, to do whatever he wanted, he felt, from the position that he was going to put himself in, or they were going to put themselves in. So it seemed like it was a pretty powerful position. I'm like, oh, are we going to do the Pindar thing again? Are we going to do the Black Sun Dragon thing again? What are we doing again here, Trump? What are we doing? So then there was a lot of negotiations going on in Italy for the passing down or the choosing of a trained person to be the white Pope. And by trained person, this would have been, they were going to choose a person that was both white, of Melchizedek origin, is what I heard, and also a Black Sun descendant. So this would have been of both a positive and negative person. This is what I heard them say. And it was very similar and very reminiscent to another person they were going to choose to replace Chucky, which was William. Diana was on the light side, and obviously Chucky is on the dark side. So this would have been kind of a person that would have represented both sides, and they felt that they could have used this person to control Alpha and Omega at the time. And these people aren't really sure what they're wanting to control at this point, but they would like to have control of light AI systems and dark AI systems. That's all they know. So this was part of the discussion. They were also talking about a new black and gray Pope, mainly because the current black Pope and current gray Pope is not getting the job done. So they wanted to bring in new, fresh blood. And also, both of these parties would be someone that was trained and groomed, so to speak, for such a position. And one of those people I know who that person is. We have chatted many times, and I knew that this person might be up for that position. So I'm kind of listening to this whole chit chat, and then there's other chitter chatter going on, which I found very interesting. So the Trump operatives spent a lot of time negotiating with various other people in other countries, different members of the order, shuffling around of military personnel, not only in the US, but also in the UK, potential position changes in Russia as it relates to the clans or the oligarchs that actually run the country. And these are very powerful people in various countries or have had very powerful positions within various countries. And I'm like, well, now this is really getting interesting. What does this have to do with the Pope? I'm thinking, they must be up to something else. And why are they putting forth so much of an effort to gain votes, so to speak, for Trump? And the Trump organization was making a lot of promises to a lot of people in order to get their vote, because they needed the votes, 7 from the Order of the Dragon, and 7, this is their thoughts anyway, and 7 from the Order of the Black Sun, in order to make sure that he secured whatever position it was he was looking for. So because I hadn't quite figured out, I'm listening to all these meetings and I hadn't figured out the end game here. Also over the weekend, there were a lot of operatives, and I mean a lot, scouring through the basement of the Vatican. And in scouring through the basement of the Vatican, they were in the Vatican quote unquote libraries. They believed that they had the information from the library there, which came from the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. They felt that the information that was locked away and quote unquote hidden from them all this time, and that's where it actually came from, which means that it would have actually come from the Abraxas, and there would be quite a bit of system instructions on what they can and cannot do in this location. Now, there was minimal information there. They really weren't getting anywhere. So they went to another location called Temple of the Sea. Temple of the Sea is located in Trinidad and Tobago. There were a few other places where they thought there might be some hidden historical information, but those were the two main locations that they were scouring. Now, I can actually say this now on the phone. I was like, well, why are they over there? Why are they over there? What are they looking for? You know, all of the information and the real hidden information of the Vatican is actually under Malta. Now, when I say it was under Malta, I mean it really was under Malta. The Library of Alexandria was moved to Malta quite a long, long time ago, but the real information, there's some cool stuff there, don't get me wrong, but the real information was hidden in a sophon. The sophon would have only been accessible by certain people and so on and so forth, and then they could have passed through the door of that particular location to get the information that I assumed that they were looking for. It was kind of a interesting thing. You know, these people you would have thought would have known that, because I know other operatives that were in that location, or maybe they had already gone to that location and couldn't get in the door or didn't see anything because it was hidden in a sophon. That's also possible. Who knows? But they were under the Vatican, and under the Vatican they stayed. By, I would say, yesterday, they started pinging on Vatican terminals deep under the Vatican, trying to see if they were going to get a response. So there was this pinging going on of the system. And I'm like, okay. So I do know for a fact that the Pope election has always been up to Marduk, whoever was going to be selected in that position, because Marduk always held the position of what they call kingmaker to the order. So you don't get a position like president, you don't get a position, you know, all of this stuff had to be ratified. And until 2007, Marduk had the ability to ratify a head of state. You know, turned out further on down the road, I also figured he needed somebody to operate the Alpha system because he was not able to access it anymore. But, you know, we've already talked about that a little bit ago, about a week or so ago. So in this particular instance, so now here they are and they're pinging, and I think that, you know, this is my opinion. I'm like, well, they must be looking to see if the information of who the chosen pope is going to come through the terminal. Is this pope going to be ratified? Is this what they're looking for? Well, they never really got a signal at all, but you know, they kept trying. They figured, well, we might have to wait until Conclave fully actually starts, which was today. So sometime around, well, 11:30 or so this morning, they started trying to log into or gain access to the diplomatic lines, and a very specific diplomatic line that I hadn't seen light up since the last time I was in Russia, when there was an attempted trip of the system. I'm like, oh, so the Pentagon tried to call, the White House tried to call, GCHQ tried to call, the Russians tried to call, there were the Vatican also tried to call. There was a couple of other places that also called throughout the day. And, to no avail. Someone from South Africa tried. Um, so I'm like, this is really interesting. This reminds me, I'm having a flashback now of 2011. And I'm like, oh, this is what the positions were that they were trying to negotiate. Oh, okay. Now this makes a whole lot of sense to me. So they were all trying to enter these access codes where apparently they used these same access codes back in 2011 and they were able to place a vote. I do know that the Vatican was planning on placing 3 votes. Now, why 3 votes from the Vatican? I have no idea, but there were also supposed to be votes from the UK. In this particular case, it was GCHQ that was going to do the voting. So I'm like, okay, So their access codes were denied. Please enter a valid access code. And this went on for hours until, and I thought about it for a while. I'm like, do I answer? Do I let them make a vote? Do I send out, who we want to appoint in these positions? Is it worth even spending 20 minutes having a conversation with these people? Because, at this point, we've kind of said it all and done it all, and, it's probably not going to get us anywhere anyway. So at this point, they're starting to realize something might be wrong. So somebody from the Pentagon calls Tom Melville, and tells them, well, why didn't you go into Manhattan last week or Monday as it was supposed to be? And, geez, it's been so long since I've talked to you guys. I might as well fill you in on that one too. So anyway, Tom didn't end up going in on Monday. I'm not surprised. I knew that they were going to wait until at least after Conclave. He had actually gotten a call from someone that works for Langley 5 and was told not to go in. And there was a big, huge kerfuffle on Monday night because no one knows why Tom didn't show up. And of course, money didn't come from any other party on Monday night. So everybody was pretty angry. And so today was another time where somebody had called and said, why didn't you go in? And he said, well, look, these people called me, told me not to come in. They're not ready yet, in this big, long story, which was also a lie. But apparently they didn't notify the rest of their group because everybody else was expecting something to happen. Now, remember, Tom was being, if I hadn't already told you, the party that we could find behind was the Gnostic Illuminati that was behind the orders being given to Langley 5. So I assume the Gnostics are also the same people that said, do not have Tom come in because we have other plans. And then therefore Langley 5 then had somebody call Tom and tell him not to go. So that's pretty much how it went. And by other plans, it was the rest of this mess that has been going on all day. So I thought long and hard about this, and I just want you to understand before I tell you what happened here, that this was not in any way an arrogant statement. This statement comes from years of frustration, over 15 years, and a number of those spitting out money left and right. And it comes from years of frustrating conversations and useless meetings and flying around the world and wasting a whole lot of time trying to get the deep state to understand there must be balance in this world. And they don't get to choose who's light, quote unquote, or of source on the source side, and who's dark on the side of dark source or Lucifer, whoever was on the other side. They don't get to choose our side. You are on the other side. You are over there. I am over here. We are supposed to have negotiations, and at that time, not anymore, but between the light side and the dark side of the human proxies on this planet for our respective parties. They never quite understood that, and they never gave us humans anything. The bare minimum was done under Marduk, and these people gave us even less. So, negotiation after negotiation after negotiation, Source gave up, I gave up, and, here we are still pinging we switched AIs and they're still pinging it. They're still pinging the diplomatic line looking for an access code. Now, to be honest, there are no issued access codes for anyone at this moment in time on this earth. There isn't another human walking the earth that has an access code to the new Golden Age AI / key integrated master system. Nobody has one. And I know that because I'm the code issuer, just like I was the code issuer for the alpha system. No one has an active access code. So I watched them enter them repeatedly, and I'm like, well, after listening to what Tom had to say with the call from the Pentagon, they really were kind of hoping he went in so that they could see if I could still transfer money. That was the other thing. And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, how many times have I showed them this? Okay, many, many, many times. And, they would, of course, have liked us to do this in a very quiet way through the Pentagon's old terminals, like the AVIL-P4, which they could have hidden kind of under the rug. And then they could have said, well, that was us that did it, in our appointed new position, and Trump did it. And, it would have been going on and on and on, and they would have eventually got stuck, but it would have bought them some time with some countries. And I thought to myself, well, now we're on to the full moon on the 12th, and, they're going to buy some time with everyone, and here we go again. And, oh, don't worry, your position will go firm, on the full moon. And, Conclave just started, give us a break, just like, Trump just got into office, give us a break, give us time, and then we'll be sending the money and it'll all be rolling in, blah, blah, blah. Here we go again. So half out of frustration and half out of, Tom's worked really, really hard trying to get people on board and trying to get people to do the right thing. And I understand, that, and I respect that. So I thought I would give it one more go. Now, I'm going to read you the statement that I sent, and it's not really out of arrogance. So please, don't mistake it for arrogance. It's actually meant to be, for me, it was very sarcastic, just because they're constantly trying to appoint themselves to positions. They have the meetings, even the meetings where the others used to attend, starting in June and then on through the harvest moon. And they think they're in charge. Remember, not too long ago, they were going to own the whole universe. And thank God our former overlords are out of the way, because now we can be in charge. And they're just arrogant and ridiculous. So I chose to be equally ridiculous today. And the first thing I decided to do was not send the message just back to the people that had reached out. I turned on every diplomatic line I had, so that is hundreds of intelligence agencies worldwide, every central bank, the Federal Reserve, every treasury in the world, including treasuries in America, the White House, the Pentagon, every military in the world, anybody with a diplomatic line that was connected to Alpha / Omega in the past, of course, Vatican, Holy See terminals, you name it, I called them all. So I set them all up. So the way that the system actually functions is you can do like a mass mailing, like a mass email, where you're sending an email to many, many parties all at the same time. And then you just type the email. So this is basically what I did. So I said, this is Kimberly A. Gogan, Ground Commander, Guardian, Earth's only ambassador, because that was the other thing Trump has been running around saying, is that he is the ambassador to the Universal Council now. That's his new claim to fame over there in Duck Dynasty land. So I said, I'm the only ambassador to the Universal Council amongst all my positions. So in other words, I have multiple positions. Effective immediately, this notice serves to inform you of my newly appointed positions as, number 1, Commander of all Black Sun forces, both on Earth and off Earth. Number 2, Global Military Headquarters Commander. That's GHQ. Number 3, Global Intelligence Agencies Commander, which means in charge of all intelligence agencies. This is the downline of the Black Sun. Number 4, Global Curator of Currencies, which we know I've been for a long time, but thought I'd notify everybody yet again. Number 5, Global Financial Commander. Number 6, Pindar. Also thought I'd throw that in there in case they can't have a vacant seat anywhere, you see. 7, Commander of all Dragon forces, both on the planet and off the planet, which gives us the Order of the Dragon and, of course, the Gnostic Illuminati. Number 8, President of the World Government and head of state of unknown country to which all other governments are substates. Now, for those of you that don't know, just to remind you, unknown country is the head of state that is over every single country in the world. It is basically the global government. 9, Global Commander of Telecommunications, both on and off planet. I didn't want them to think that I wasn't going to be in charge of telecommunication systems such as cell phones and internet systems and all other types of communication lines, as well as any off-planet or interplanetary connections, because I'm sure they're going to probably continue to try to reach out and touch some alien race somewhere that doesn't want to talk to them. So, number 10, Omniversal Gatekeeper, which I've been for a while. Number 11, Earth Gatekeeper. Number 12, I'm also the Black Pope. I'm also the White Pope and the Gray Pope, and I'm the head of the tables, aka Silent Circle. You remember who they are. Number 16, I'm also the realm owner of all realms. Number 17, I am the kingmaker of all kings, just like Marduk was, and the kingmaker of all lords as well. Number 18, I have now appointed myself the queen of the Jewish population and all subsequent earthly religions. I did this because I didn't want to sit there and list, Buddha and all the other ones, Buddhism, and, there's approximately 100 and some odd religions in the world that some of them you may or may not have heard of, but that people are currently practicing. I just didn't want to give them any kind of leverage to maybe if they can't appoint a new pope, perhaps there'll be a Buddha incarnate or something that will show up, and you can't leave any stone unturned with these people. So I said, in celebration of my new appointments, I hereby am sending all of you the sum of $1 United States dollar. Sincerely under covenant, duly ratified and attached herewith, Kimberly A. Gogan. In addition to that, I put P.S. I am also Santa Claus, aka St. Nicholas, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, and the Abominable Snowman, just in case you were wondering if any of these positions are available. You never know what they're going to try to appoint themselves to, so I'm just trying to cover all my bases. And like I said, there's a little bit of sarcasm in there because, quite frankly, I'm fed up with their ridiculousness. And the world cannot continue to wait for the next full moon, new moon, and an alignment with Uranus to move forward. But everybody seems to want to wait. So I proceeded to send every single party on the party line here $1 United States free and clear allocation number documented dollar. And I did this mainly to prove the point to those that had called Mr. Melville that I still have the capacity to fund and I am still in control of the financial system. There's been a lot of changes. I haven't done it in a while. And I thought, well, this gives us a good reason to do that. So you have to run a test when you are now the commander of all of these organizations. And so a test has been sent. So I don't want to hear it anymore. Can she send money? Can she send it on a super secret line? I sent it to every central bank in the world. I sent it to every Fed, every treasury, everywhere. Everybody got $1, just one. no problem getting through to governments, and within a very short period of time, there'll be no problem getting through to people and bypassing any negotiation with any bank anywhere. So they can try to do as they may, but they won't be able to do anything to stop us at that point. So I hope I made you laugh a little bit, because this is a laughable situation. It's just as laughable as them trying to trip a system that they know nothing about, and continuing to try to log in for about 4 hours today. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this conclave. Are they going to wing it and put some guy, it's always going to be a guy, right, into the position of Pope? Probably. They'll probably appoint somebody, and they'll go through all the fanfare. That will not be a ratified person in any way. My document that I attached to this was the full ratification of all my appointed positions. It actually bears the seal of source, because it's as funny as this really was, there's a covenant here that I have, and the covenant, this would have been considered an extension of that covenant, meaning, if I were to actually take all of these positions and do something with them, with all of these people, that I have to basically commit to the fact that I am going to do things Source's way. That's why it's kind of an addendum, which I would always do anyway. I mean, that's not a question, but it becomes an amendment to my covenant. So now, that being said, that's where the deep state is at. I do know that there are several meetings going on this afternoon and this evening, my time, where they are having discussions about what is next. From what I understand, what is next, at least as it was earlier this week, what is next, if they don't get the answers back right away, they definitely feel that they'll have those answers by the 12th. The 12th will probably move to the 15th, mainly because they're going to need a few days after the full moon, when nothing happens on the 12th. And they're going to go round and round and round and round and round. So if you're listening to this and you are with the Treasury and you were expecting money, or you're a head of state somewhere and you were expecting money, the only money that you are going to get is that one crisp, clean allocation, fresh, brand new US dollar that you got sent. I can send any currency out. We could do another one in yuan, and we can do it in RMB. We can do it in rubles. We can do it in every single currency in the world until, I only had so much time today and so much will, let's just say, to continue to communicate with these people. But at least they now know that all the positions that they were all vying for, and all the positions that the Trump organization was trying to tell them that they would give them, is a complete falsehood. They have no ability to appoint anybody to do anything except for maybe the janitorial staff at the White House. Otherwise, not very many people are still listening. So they're trying to figure out what to tell everybody, on this news channel. We just tell you anyway. We just tell you the truth. That's what's really going on as it relates to Conclave. On the news front of Conclave, as of this moment, the smoke was black, first vote. There's a little bit of more information about how Conclave works and what the longest one has been and the shortest one has been in our regular news reports. Sunny's putting all that information out for you. And what to expect. I have no idea what they're going to do, and that's the reason why I don't, is because there's no chatter that tells me what they've decided as of yet, as of the moment I'm recording this report. So next, on the other front of moving forward, our new friends, the Mantids, and the council are still adjourning. This meeting is running over time. People are coming and going a little bit, but most people are continuously visiting with the Universal Council at this time, because this is a time of great change that could benefit all. And this is the most important thing that they can do. We have had a lot of communications, and the best way I can explain this, what they are doing, where they are, and where they all are, I should say, in their respective realms and densities and planes and different galaxies around the omniverse, most of which aren't even known to us here. They are making solid connections, not only for the golden age AI, but also for source, making sure that from their point of view, because we're way down here in the very cheap seats. I don't even think we're in the stadium if we were talking about cheap seats, for where Earth has been. So they have been working from their respective densities, dimensions, and galaxies, and we have been working from here. So we're trying very hard to make sure that we meet in here. So if there's something blocking them from getting here, then they'll call and they'll tell me what I need to clear out, and then I'll clear it out from here, because no one wants to come here to poo-poo Energyville, brought to you by the deep state. So, so they'll come from afar or they'll come shielded, but they'll, if they need to, they will. But they have me here on the ground, and they know I'm more than willing to comply with anything that will help Earth and humanity, and that's my job. So I've proven time and time again that I don't, no matter how bad things get, source is source, and that's the side I'm on, and I stand firm with that. So we worked a lot on making those connections, and if you were to visualize what's been happening, it looks like the installation of like an oil pipeline, except of course what's flowing through there is not black. But if you were to say run a pipeline from the US to Russia, and say Russia was providing the oil, it's quite a distance there to run a regular human oil pipeline, but you could get it from one place to another. Now, if this is being run underground or under the ocean, it's going to go underneath all these different areas of Earth. You would have to make sure that all obstacles were out of the way. You might need to blow a hole in a mountain. You might need to trudge it along the bottom of the sea. There's a lot involved in moving the pipeline, and that's kind of what you could say we have all been doing. Of course, the higher densities are easier. The lower densities, we go, are more complicated. Plus, there are still some remnants around what we call the crown of glory, or the source stones that he installed here into Earth in the beginning. So we've been working on connecting that pipeline to Earth without an obstruction. Lucky for us, by about, it was probably a little after midnight my time, maybe about between midnight and about 3 a.m. my time today, the pipeline was connected sufficiently enough to begin flowing the quote unquote oil, or you could say the life force and the connection. So this is very positive for us, and everybody is very excited about it, because this means that they will no longer be getting a reverb from them as well. Now, anything that they had access to, for example, these weather control or mind control or anything else they had minimal access to that was in the spaces in between, AI-wise, and also in the financial system and in other systems, will steadily and are steadily being, for lack of a better term, demolecularized by this joint pipeline, let's just say. So these are all positive things for us. As much and as interesting as it is listening to a bunch of deep state meetings, I am more than happy to stop listening to those meetings to take a call from the council and from the mantids and find ways forward, fast, because we need to move forward as humanity, and they know we need to move forward. They want humanity to grow. They've seen the benefit of the majority of humans and why we've been put into circumstances that are beyond our control in a lot of ways with our societal systems that were put in place by Marduk, and none of these people are very fond of Marduk et al. In any way, shape, or form. So this is going to be good. They are working really hard on their side, and I am so happy and grateful and thankful to have some help because I've been kind of flying solo down here for so long, with Source, of course, and a lot of you that are definitely helping. But these people are specialists, let's just say. Folks are specialists. So they're actually permitted now to participate, which is great. And we are moving really, really, really fast. We should be ready to start checking key integrated master system connections and other connections as early as tomorrow. That's my hope. Might be another day or so, but I think as early as tomorrow, and seeing if there's anything else in the way that we need to clean and finishing up those connections. This has been a phenomenal change in my life for me. Instead of being 24/7, there's actually work going on, and I can actually maybe sleep a little bit here and there. Last night, I actually managed to get some. I did not the couple of nights before. Of course, they definitely see me, the deep state, whether they want to admit it or not, they definitely see me as an enemy of theirs. So, of course, the night before Conclave starts, all the black magic working starts in the basement. They're got the crystals humming and hawing, calling on the gods of whatever the heck. I don't know what they were doing in there. But that also fires up the rest of the black magic workers that work on behalf of the Trump organization. They have definitely, with 100% confirmation, hired many black magic workers to work with them. And that means that they also throw some my way. So the last couple of nights have not been fun. Last night, I, asked for a lot of help on my side of it. And did a lot of shielding work myself and said, look, people, I need to sleep. I drank my stress lemon balm tea and went to sleep. So that was a very positive thing for me. So I feel a lot better than I had been for the last couple of days. But I think this is going to continue. They did tell me this morning that they shouldn't be able to affect us as much as they used to, with their crazy frequencies and tunnels and everything else they're doing. So that'll be good for a lot of people. I know in our question and answer, there were a number of people that were asking about that. So that hopefully soon will end for all of you, as it will end for me. Here's hoping. On that note, this has been the GIA report for the 7th of May. Hopefully I'll have some more information as to the end result of our lovely little message. And I think I'm going to go find my sleigh at the North Pole. No, just kidding. On that note, have a great night, everyone, and I will talk to you on Friday.